Gene, Steve Jobs said they'd never do something like this, but Steve Jobs was famous for going back on his pronouncements. What do you make of this?
I make it that the tablet market is going to be bigger than the PC market. And right now, Apple's missing out on 30% of the market. I think they want to change that. And I think that Steve Jobs probably couldn't have predicted the success of these smaller tablets. And Apple's making the right move and going to have their own product now to compete.
From a user standpoint, it seemed that one of the things that Jobs was really big on, that you could do everything that you could do on a device, you could do on any one of the devices. That while you might buy a Mac that's got more or less processing power, more or less memory, you could essentially run all the same programs on it. You could have the same user experience. When they go down market, do you think that Apple will change that with the iPad and make it a reading device, not a small iPad?
Yeah, I think it is going to be a full iPad. I think it's going to look and feel very much the same as the existing. I think it's going to be able to run all the apps. Think of it as an oversized iPod Touch and an undersized iPad, but it will be an iPad. And I think you're exactly right as how Apple thinks about it, is they want the devices to be in part of that much talked about ecosystem. And so I think that this is going to fit comfortably within that.
What about the timing of this? I think you wrote that you expected in the fall, and that seems to be things we've heard elsewhere. That seems like an unusual time for them to do a refresh. They usually do it every 18 months or so.
Yeah, it is a little bit different. Normally it would have been for the iPad, the refresh would have been kind of in the March quarter. But if you look back, they used to do the iPod refreshes in September. They still do, but given now iPod is 6% of the business and is declining about 20% year over year, I guess the sizzle from that event kind of gets progressively less. So I think there's two reasons. Number one is they kind of wanted to boost that, but more importantly is that Apple's really tapping into this shift in terms of what people are buying for the holiday, and they wanted to get in front of that critical back-to-school and holiday season.
Competition seems to be very happy to sell devices, whether it's Samsung or I don't know, Amazon. They love selling stuff at single-digit and even low single-digit profit margins. Of course, they'd love to sell them for more, but that's not the business model they choose. If Apple's going to go head-to-head with that, is Apple going to start to look at lower margins to get that volume, or you think they can still make a device that competes on price and yet still have the kind of 35% margins that Apple's traditionally shown?
Yeah, it probably will be a little bit lower margin. I think that it's, in general, the iPod tends to be a little bit lower margin. The iPhone tends to be a higher margin, so I think it's going to be more kind of in that lower margin category, but not significantly different than the overall corporate. So I wouldn't expect any downside to the estimates because of that. But I think you said it very well, is that the key selling point for an Android device or a Kindle Fire is price. That's the big feature. And Apple's going to probably put this in at $299, and my guess is that the Kindle Fire, the 7-inch Kindle Fire, will soon be $149. It's $199 now, and so I think that, yeah, it's going to be double the price, but in terms of the utility, it's interesting to see a lot of those Kindle Fires get returned, and you don't see a lot of iPads getting returned.
One of the reasons I'm in LA actually is to tear apart one of the Google Nexus and really get a look at the guts of that thing, in addition to hanging out with all the big shots in Hollywood and rolling with my peeps. But I wonder, when you look at the model for Google and you look at the business model for Amazon, where the device leads to selling software, goods and services and so on, did Apple take that lesson from the music business that they want to sell software? Or do you think they're still looking at this purely as really a hardware business with a little software on the side?
I think what they really see themselves is they're a software business. Apple really sees themselves as a software business, and they get paid for that software through their hardware. So one quick example, the new MacBook Pro, which just came out, you can get the base version, but you can get the second version up has 250 gigs more of storage, and they charge you $400 more for that. So the reality is that's a lot that they're charging for that hardware piece, and really what they're trying to do is get paid on the software. So I think that ultimately Apple wants to do both of them, but I think they kind of think of it the way they do great software, a great experience.